Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Did anybody spot the deliberate mistake that I just made with my button-pushing antics in the studio? Yeah, no prizes. We will keep a very close eye on events in Carcassonne, where, as you've heard, there is a hostage situation unfolding with a gunman who has already shot and injured a police officer. A police officer who was off-duty and out of uniform, which does speak, as our listener Stephen, whose sister witnessed the episode, suggested, it does speak of some sort of intelligence, perhaps. And one of the hostages in the supermarket where he is holed up has been, we believe, shot dead. More on that as and when it happens. I am at 33 minutes after 11. I'm going to steer you now in a completely different direction. And we're going to talk about something that, well, I think we've had quite a good run lately, you and me, haven't we, with the sort of stone-cold moral quandaries. We just literally describe a scenario and invite each other to pick a side. And you'll allow me to indulge myself a little when I say the ones I enjoy the most are the ones when I actually don't know what side to pick. So obviously on most of the political stuff I've got a fairly well-developed position, evidence-based, voice of reason. But on some of the social stuff, I do blow around in the wind. Was it yesterday or the day before when we talked about assisted dying? It was the day before, wasn't it? And my God, I honestly thought that I had pretty much ring-fenced my position on that, having undergone a full U-turn in the course of the last few years. But we framed the question differently from how we usually do. I asked you to remind me why you're worried about the prospect of assisted dying being decriminalised in Britain. Guernsey in May is set to sort of lead the way on that. And by asking the question differently, the calls came in from a completely different perspective. And I know, like me, a lot of you will remember Nick's call in particular for the rest of your days. An inspirational bloke. Speaking of inspirational, I'd just like to take a moment to thank the staff at Combat Stress, the country's leading military mental health charity. 2,000 referrals a year, Combat Stress accept from servicemen and women, former servicemen and women who are struggling with, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety or depression. They had a fundraising dinner at the Langham Hotel in London last night, which was attended by all manner of impressive individuals from the ranks. And also, I don't know if you've ever been in a room where someone has made your spine tingle. Have you ever been in a room where someone's made your spine tingle? Patrick Stewart, the actor, Sir Patrick Stewart, talked about his father coming back from the Second World War with what they now recognise would be post-traumatic stress disorder. And he told the story of an unhappy childhood. He told the story of a very angry and often abusive man who would visit his anger and his violence upon his family. And he spoke of how he was brought to realise later in life that his father was suffering from pretty profound PTSD and probably shell shock as well. And that's why he supports Combat Stress. And it was one of those moments where you felt privileged, actually, to be in the room for such a poignant and personal explanation of a charitable position. And I mentioned that, A, to say thank you, and B, to say I did the auction. I've never done an auction before, and I had a ball. So if you do need an auctioneer at any point in the near future, get in touch via all the usual avenues. 11:36 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you will need when I've told you which moral quandary we're about to discuss. Just trying to work out whether I'm being a bit facetious when I say I haven't actually got a view on this. No, I have. I genuinely want to know what you think before I decide what I think. What's the story, James? There is a teacher, a maths teacher, at a school in East Sussex who has a double life, which has now been exposed. When I came on air, the school and the teacher had both declined to comment. Whether or not that situation has developed at all, we will find out. I have to tell you that this teacher, whose name is Scott Sherwood, has a double life as a porn star called Aaron Cage. And the children at the school have, I hesitate to say exposed, but it's an irresistible pun. The children at the school have exposed him. They have found material online in which he features in explicit films and photo shoots, calendars and similar, and is, not to put too fine a point on it, a fully paid up member of the porn star community. So some parents are outraged by this. One said, I think it's disgusting. I always want to do a comedy voice when I'm reading out these anonymous comments in newspapers. I think it's disgusting. It makes you wonder what type of checks the school does. My partner and I are angry that the school hasn't really said anything. All we've been told is that he has been removed as a matter of safeguarding. I don't want to say anything else until we've had a proper explanation from the school. He was a mentor and form tutor for Year 10 students at the 850 pupil school, and moved into a full-time role in 2017. It was 8 years ago that he apparently became a pornographic model. Alongside his teaching work, he flew to America to appear in a selection of films, and that is pretty much where we are. And I have kids. I have a child in Year 7, and this is a secondary school. And one mother focuses upon that. She says, my son is in Year 7 and found out about it in the lunch hall while all the children were talking about it. So what question am I going to ask you? Well, you tell me, actually. Should this teacher lose his job after being busted for making pornographic films prior to his appointment in the school? And I think what you have here is a tension between the principle and the practice. Because in principle, I'm not sure that behaviour prior to assuming a job in the school that in no way involves illegality or similar should impact upon his potential employability. But once the kids have got hold of the pictures and the films, I wonder whether he'd be able to discipline a class at all. So top of the list today will be teachers, 0345 6060 973. What do you think? Teachers, because I'm a parent and I can do the parent thing and I want lots of mums and dads to ring me. But to start with, can a teacher, would you be able to, if you were a really good teacher, would you be able to overcome the discovery that you were also a porn star? Would you be able to control a classroom, to keep a classroom wrapped and learning, even if everybody in the classroom had seen you in the Altogether doing the great fandango? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. I like these stories because I think this has actually room for manoeuvre. I think there are grey areas here. It may well be that by 12 noon or 12:30, depending on your appetite for talking about this, it may well be that I've concluded I'm an idiot, and of course he should and or shouldn't be allowed to teach anywhere or anyone. I think it's disgusting, said one mother. My daughter is in Year 10. Another child found things online and put them on the computer for everyone to see. How would a child have found things? I mean, what are the odds on that? And here's the other thing as well. John Ronson's very strong on this. I don't know if you've listened to his latest podcast, Butterfly Effect, but John Ronson makes the point that pretty much every adult will at some point in their lives, and quite possibly on a very regular basis, will have viewed pornography. So we all have pornographic performers in our lives. Some people perhaps still deny it. Some people perhaps don't quite realise the extent of it in the context of their partners. Some people perhaps are, in a sense, living lies, living a kind of denial. It's a very English post-Victorian thing to be deeply conflicted about matters sexual. But what John Ronson pointed out was that there's a really strong double standard here, in that you're quite happy to watch these films when you construe the individuals in them as being somehow not quite real. They're somehow almost pantomimey, but they are real people with real feelings and real lives. And I don't know that you get to decide where one side of their story starts and the other side ends. So what happened to him was that he was writing one of his books, I think, and he'd arranged to meet up with quite a famous porn star, a female porn star, at his posh hotel in, I think it was in Miami. And as he came in, and she was dressed as one might expect a pornographic actress to dress. She was dressed in a very, what my mum would call blousy way. She was dressed in a very, in-your-face kind of style. And he came into the bar of his posh hotel, and she was a successful porn star. And he clocked the facial expression of the maitre d' and the barman. They were looking at her as if she were poo on the proverbial shoes. And he had, I love John Ronson, I could listen to him all day. He had a bit of a moment. He had a bit of a kind of, I don't know quite what you'd call it. Yeah, I do. We'd call it a penny drop moment. And he suddenly realised that these men almost certainly viewed pornography, but they were now looking at the star of the sort of pornography they viewed as if she were beneath them, as if she were inferior, as if she were deserving of dismissal, derision and contempt. And I completely understood John Ronson's position. He had this impulse to be protective towards her and to be perhaps inwardly critical of the men, because the double standard here is incredible. And I wonder if it's the same here. I think I could explain to my 12-year-old why some people film themselves having sex for other people to look at. And if I could explain that to my 12-year-old, would she then be teachable? I just don't know. 11:43 is the time. Phone lines are open. I've got 2 free, so grab one quickly. I'll have a word with Carl, then we'll take a break, and then you can fill your boots after the break. Carl is in Aldgate East. Carl, what do you think?
I don't think it should be a problem, really.
Really?
No. No, well, he wasn't teaching when he was doing it, was he? You said that he was in America.
He wasn't teaching at this school, as far as I can tell. He was juggling both jobs previously.
Yeah, fair
but
play to him. That's what I say. If he was juggling both of them, I don't think it's a problem.
How would you explain? Have you got children? Do you mind me asking?
I have, yes. My daughter's 26 years old.
Well, yeah, that's not going to be difficult to explain to a 26-year-old. But imagine she was 12. How would you explain to her that the maths teacher was in porno films?
Well, I would just tell her that it's part and parcel. You know, in this day and age, by the time they're 12, they've probably seen porn anyway. They know about it.
Well, I hope not. Not all of them. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, that's slightly remiss parenting.
Kids in school know about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, someone's watching it, aren't they?
And if it was you, what do you do for a living? Do you mind me asking?
I'm a site manager.
Okay, and if everyone on the site had been watching you at it last night, do you really think you'd be able to run the site as well today as you did yesterday?
Well,
What?
How long the video was for?
Well, no, yeah, 7 seconds, mate. I've seen your CV. No, let's stop messing around. This is a very good point, because as a site manager, you need to have a degree of authority. You need sometimes to discipline people. You have responsibilities that depend upon your status on the site. And I am cautiously suggesting that if all of the lads on the building site and the young women on the building site had seen you starring in gay porn last night, you might not have quite you might not have quite the grip upon the situation that you currently enjoy, Carl. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah. Oh, you're probably right, James. You know, you're always right, aren't you?
Yeah, there you go.
Even when you're wrong, you're right.
Even when I'm wrong, all right. Sound like my wife. That's right. I'm putting you down as an undecided then.
Yeah. No, I don't think it should matter really. But I do understand what you're saying.
It could. Well, that's what we need to find out from a teacher, because you're a site. Could a teacher?
My nephews and all that, from the age, when they were at school, you know, they've all left school now. But when they were at school, they had all videos on their phones and that. Yeah,
but that's not. They didn't star their maths teacher, mate.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that, you know, the kids...
I'm not asking, is it likely that teenage boys and girls have seen pornographic films at some point? Of course it flipping is. I'm asking...
Well, someone's got a star in it. It's got to be someone's...
I like you. I wonder whether I've caught... Because I get prudish. I blame the nuns. The nuns that taught me between the ages of 3 and 7.
I get a couple of pornos with nuns.
All right, that's quite enough of that. 11:46 is the time. Where we are just wondering what we think about it. I know I get cross sometimes with the lazy tribal side-picking footballification of everything, which is why I love these sort of stories where I'm struggling to pick a side. Do I have a problem with pornographic actors and actresses? No, of course I don't. Would I want one teaching my children maths? I don't know. I sense I probably wouldn't, but I don't know whether or not this is part of my... I have a slightly, because I was educated by nuns and monks pretty much for my entire childhood, and although I've been lucky enough to rediscover a sort of faith in my adult life, I haven't necessarily shrugged off some of the negatives of being raised in, or educated at least, in one of those environments. And I sometimes worry that it kind of holds me back a bit on modernity, on moving with the times. I get it a bit with the trans stuff, which inevitably caused a huge brouhaha earlier this week, because when women say to me, I don't want anybody in our safe space, in our changing rooms or our dressing rooms, who wasn't born a woman. I certainly don't want anyone sharing our changing rooms who still has male genitalia. I completely agree with them, until I then speak to a trans woman, and then I get all confused again. This is the problem of being open-minded and actually listening to what people have to say. I don't know what the answer is. But I do know that if we're going to arrive at an answer that is, in a utilitarian sense, the best available answer, we're going to have to be able to talk to each other without all the insults and flinging of abuse. So, back to the maths teacher porn star. There's a phrase I don't think I've ever said before. Jared is in Peacehaven. Jared, what can you tell us?
Hello there. My son goes to the school.
Does he?
He does indeed, yes. I live in Peacehaven.
Okay.
Yes, he goes to the school. He's taught by that teacher, and I'm quite dismayed, really, that he's been suspended.
Blimey. How old's your boy, if you don't mind me asking?
He's 13.
Okay, so what, year 8, year 9?
Year 9, I believe, yes.
Year 9. And just talk me through, Jared, if you don't mind, how you became aware of the scenario and how your son became aware of the scenario. How has the story unfolded down in Peacehaven?
Well, it happened about a week ago, by which he was sent messages on WhatsApp, because obviously kids being kids, they obviously talk to each other and do whatever they do on the WhatsApp, which obviously, in essence, I can't control in some ways because it's his own phone.
Yes.
I do keep an eye on him. And obviously it surfaced to us that way. So we knew about it about a week ago.
But bearing in mind, this is so your son showed you, did he? He came and said, "Crikey, Dad, look what Mr. Sherwood's done."
He more or less, yes. He said, "I don't think this is right, Dad," and things have obviously been said, and I'm not quite sure what it means. I sort of had the conversation, sat down with his son, you know, come and sit down and we'll talk about it, and obviously it all come to light then, and that was about a week ago.
I'll tell you what, mate, just to pause briefly, that's a credit to how you, and I presume his mum as well, are raising him, the fact that he feels comfortable coming to talk to you about stuff like that, because you hear some horror stories about kids who get themselves into all sorts of trouble because they're fine. So we'll pause briefly for you to give yourself a pat on the back for top quality dadding on that one. And now I have to ask you a slightly uncomfortable question, and I need to remind you as well that despite you being a top quality dad, this is a family programme and there may be children listening. How explicit was the stuff that popped up in your boy's WhatsApp account?
On a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 4 or 5.
It doesn't work though unless we know how severe the stuff you normally watch is, Jared.
That's what I comprehended.
Everybody's scale is different. I think back to Stockies and Suspenders in Mayfair magazine, that would be a 9.
Well, each to their own. But yeah, I mean, he approached me and said, "I don't think this is right." And we sat down, we talked about it, and we went on from there. And I initially kept quiet. I obviously spoke to him, but I kept quiet about it, thinking it must be a mistake or something like that.
Yeah, mistaken identity or something like that.
Exactly, and then the parents are talking about it on the local Peacehaven Facebook gossip page.
Oh, really?
Obviously then it sort of stuck as, yes, it was genuine.
And then the school responded. Did you hear from the school, or did they just suspend him without explanation?
As far as I know, they suspended him at the moment without explanation. I have forwarded you on Twitter, actually, a copy of the letter.
Oh, have you? Mate, you're a star. This is citizen journalism at its finest, isn't it? I'll dig that out in the next break. What and then you began. The phone lines have gone a bit funny. I hope we can fix it, because I don't know that we'll get anybody else quite as close to the story as you are. You began by saying you were troubled by it. Does that mean you think he should have stayed in the job?
I do. I've spoken to him on numerous occasions, admittedly some time ago. He seems a nice guy.
Yeah.
My son is doing really well at maths. It's one of the subjects that he seems to excel in.
Yeah.
And the projects that he's been given by this teacher, obviously they've now got temporary teachers in.
Right.
Obviously.
So his education will suffer.
Exactly. And from my point of view, what he gets up to behind closed doors...
Well, it's not closed doors, though, is it? It's on flipping camera. That's the opposite of closed doors.
Well, but it's legal. What he gets up to is as long as that doesn't affect his skills as a teacher, and for me as a parent, his resourcefulness to teach my child and all the other children there, I couldn't give a monkey's what he gets up to.
I hear you, actually. I mean, I've got this weird sort of Catholic hangover from my own childhood and education, and I suspect that's why I can't move fully to where you are. Finally, Jared, once you talked to your boy about it and you'd explained what you felt you needed to explain, would he be able to go back into that classroom without looking at his teacher a bit funny for the next couple of times.
That's where good parenting comes in.
It is.
I mean, admittedly,
you're right.
That's where you've got to teach. As I say, he's only young. So obviously, I need to have these conversations with him.
Sure.
Probably 5 years before what we should be having that conversation with.
I don't know about that.
If I can sit down with him and
I love this. I love this, and I double down on that compliment of your parenting skills. Do you know what you'd do now if you were a radio phone-in host?
Go on.
You'd say the only people who have a problem with this are the people who aren't confident of their own morality and parenting skills and comfortable with the idea of explaining it all to their children. So the only people who have a problem with this are the sort of prudes and the repressed weirdos. But you're not a phone-in host, so you would never say that.
There's far worse things that go on in this world from a parent that we have to teach our kids to be careful of, and this isn't one of them.
Jared,
this guy, he's made a mistake. He obviously he's feeling that pressure now, but from my point of view, as someone who oversees this and is concerned as a parent for PCS, he should come back. He should explain his wrongdoings and come back.
Would you be comfortable with him carrying on the acting work and being a teacher, or?
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
No, I thought that's what you were going to say, mate. You're the perfect caller. I'm so grateful to you. It's fantastic what you've said. You've really given me proper pause for thought and really made me think about the story from a slightly different angle. Because you're right, it does. I think it comes down to parenting. And I'll say it again, because, you know, third time lucky, you appear to have called this, I think, from a parenting point of view, you called it completely correctly. But if you're outraged at the very suggestion that your child should be taught by somebody who regularly features in pornographic performances, then there's a very strong chance, if you're a regular listener to the programme, you know what I call these. It's a little bit inappropriate, perhaps, in the context of a story involving gay porn, but these, for me, are the pendulum moments. Call 0345 606 0973 and make my pendulum swing. Adam is in Madrid, in Spain. Adam, what would you like to say?
Good morning.
Hello, Adam.
Okay, well, I'm a teacher.
Right.
Okay. I don't normally teach children. I tend to teach adults because I teach English as a foreign language.
Okay.
I have taught children.
Yes.
I don't have any moral issues with this at all. I think porn is now ubiquitous. It's almost part of everyday life.
Yes.
The children had probably all seen porn before.
Well, year 7.
Well, you'd be surprised.
No, I would, but I have a child in year 7, and I know her and her friends, and
even though they don't necessarily understand what they're seeing,
yeah,
they send stuff to each other.
Show each other on their phones and stuff like that.
You know, and they snigger about it.
Yeah, all right.
And there are problems of kids sexting each other, even though they're not really aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and of course, that is a moral issue, but the fact that somebody takes part in porn, to me, is not a moral issue at all.
No. Is there a big butt coming?
Yes.
Carry on.
As a teacher, there is a serious problem here of classroom management.
Right.
So it's more of a problem for the school than from really, you know, how is that man going to stand in front of that class and have them take him seriously and not snigger every time they see him? You know, it's going to make it very, very difficult for him to teach. Unless all the parents are like your previous caller.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
You know,
I want to live in a world where everyone's like Jared,
yeah.
but I acknowledge that we probably don't, and that causes
his
problems.
attitude is extremely admirable.
Yes.
The mere fact that we're talking about this, you know, if everyone was like him, this wouldn't have been a news item at all.
Oh, it would.
No.
It would have been,
Well,
because he still would have been
but
suspended, but then all the parents, like-minded parents, would have clubbed together and demanded that the suspension be rescinded. Adam, I'm moving on only because it's time for the news. It's 12 noon. The situation unfolding in France in what appears to be a terrorist attack. Individual gunman inside a supermarket in the town of Trebes, which is near Carcassonne, and he's known to have killed at least one person. Some reports suggesting 2. Police officers shot and wounded, and a supermarket worker shot dead. I will keep very close eyes on those stories, on this particular story, on this developing story, and bring you information as and when it develops. So a police union official has said that the hostage taker has killed at least one person. There are some reports, as Simon just alluded to in his bulletin, that there may be 2 fatalities already, and the French Prime Minister, I think, has said that it appears to be a terrorist act. Forgive me, I'm just looking at some of the some of the footage on the screen in front of me. I think I was in Trebs, actually, last summer, bizarrely. Apropos nothing in particular. We'll keep a very close eye on that on your behalf. There's a gathering of heavily armed security officers now outside the super... Yeah, I was. That's the supermarket. I went, my goodness me. Yeah, heavily armed security personnel now outside the Super U supermarket in Trebs. Developing situation. We'll keep you up to speed with it as and when we can. Wayne in Basildon's been in touch. He's a clever lad, Wayne, but he possibly listens a little bit too closely to the programme. He's become something of a part of the furniture on the programme, and he spots parallels sometimes between my various positions on issues because he's so familiar with them, such as his commitment to the station. And he says that I'm being a bit like I am on tattoos on this issue of a former porn star being suspended from his job as a teacher. I'm moving on it, actually. I'm moving, but largely thanks to Jared. But then Adam in Madrid reminded us that it won't be every parent who is as open-minded and as relaxed about this as Jared is, or indeed every parent that has a relationship with their child as frank and open as Jared's appears to be. But Wayne makes the point. He says, it's the same bias that you had about tattoos, James. You wouldn't mind me teaching your children, and I have tattoos. What if I had been a porn star? How would you feel then? Honestly, mate, I'd feel sorry for you for being bankrupt. But the point stands, and the Pope has waded into the debate about tattoos today. I do have a prejudice, or I did have. I wonder if it's still there. The Pope has suggested that tattoos can help build communities. Meeting with young people ahead of a forthcoming synod of Catholic bishops, he told them, don't be afraid of tattoos. It's remarkable. There was a question from a young Ukrainian student priest who asked the Holy Father how to respond to present-day culture, and the Pope told his audience of about 300 young people that tattoos and body art were not necessarily a bad thing. I'm 99% certain they're forbidden by the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus, because I'm pretty sure that there was something doing the rounds on social media that had some redneck in America who'd had the Leviticus quote about homosexuality tattooed on his arm, and hadn't realised that if he turned the page of the Bible, tattoos were described in very similar language to how men lying with men were described in the verse that he decided to have tattooed on his arm. What question am I going to ask about tattoos if we move on to this story? I've just got a slightly mischievous desire to ask slightly older people whether or not they regret them. Is there an age at which you think, what was I thinking of? A friend of mine had a tiny tattoo on her wrist when she was 16, and she started regretting it by the time she was 17. I'm thinking more about you having something done in your early 20s and be cool with it right up until your 50s. And then when you hit your 60s, it's the stupidest thing you ever did. We may get onto that later in the programme. Back to the teacher with the interesting sideline. Amanda is in Wigan. Amanda, what do you think?
My son's 15, and that would be just irresistible to him in class. He'd just run with it.
Well, then I'm chucking him out. He can go and stand in the corridor until he's learned how to behave himself.
He would, but I think... you've been 15 yourself, James.
Mate, I still am. I still am on the inside, Amanda. It's one of the great curses of my life. I've never got past 15 on the inside.
It's just his personality. He's a joker. He's the one, who it's just the way he is. It would take some very stern chaps at home, and I think he will be...
But you can't. I mean, well, that means he's going to be causing trouble in class, whatever the weather, and this just gives him an excuse to do it. So that problem is not the one caused by the teacher's pornographic sideline. It's caused by your boy's, well, you describe it as cheeky, chappy demeanour. I suspect some of his teachers might describe it rather differently.
I just think that if...
Do you have a problem with it?
No.
Well, then...
No, I don't.
Well, then... This is not right. You can't discriminate against him because he filmed himself doing the fandango.
It's just, I just see the problem with putting a teacher with that history in front of a class of teenagers.
I think I'm moving with Jared. I'm not with Amanda on this one. I think we could work this. I reckon we could sit your boy down, have a chat. Look, you can take the mickey if you want, son. But if you do, he's going to sling you out into the corridor and you won't be allowed back in until you've learned how to behave.
That would happen, but I think the gossip world and the way it works, with 15-year-olds, and when you hear them, twittering away about the teachers, if one teacher's seen another teacher or etc.
Yeah, but this doesn't. I think this almost blasts. This blasts normal gossip out of the water. He's built like a brick outhouse, this fella, for the record. So
it'd be irresistible. Absolutely irresistible.
He's 17 stone, 6'2". He's almost as muscly as me. I think he's going to be all right keeping the discipline with 15-year-old boys.
I think he probably will, but what a point I was making was that
the classroom
he put
management
himself in an incredibly difficult position.
Like Adam in Madrid. Classroom management could be. And I guess we don't know the answer to that. We'd have to actually be the head teacher or be the teacher. We would be the ones that knew whether or not he was capable of pulling this off. But I agree with you, it's very, very easy to imagine circumstances in which a teacher wouldn't be able to carry this off. I think he looks like quite a cool dude. I suspect he might be able to, but then I don't know what the odds are on getting another parent from the same school to ring in today. I shall certainly leave a phone line open for them. Amanda, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Sam's in Ealing Broadway. Sam, what's going on?
Hi, so I'm a university lecturer here, and I'm also a private college teacher.
Okay.
And for English, and for me, it's not the case of what he's done, it's more to do with authority. So you have to look at the fact that he's teaching 15-year-olds, if he's obviously in year 10, 14, 15, they're at that age where they're on their social media, everything's spreading, they think they know the world, and so I've always told my teachers, because being a deputy in the private college, I've always told my teachers, look, your students, you can have a rapport with them, but you're not having a friendship with them. They shouldn't know you. They shouldn't know your life. And so in this situation, I've had students say to me, because I'm a boxing coach, sir, can you help me with boxing? And I said, look, if you want to find a gym to go to, do that. But I can't be your teacher, because otherwise, in the classroom, they're going to say, well, I know, sir. I know him outside. And so that relationship diminishes in terms of the authority. And
my best teachers at school, I had relationships outside the classroom with. The teachers that took me to the theatre, even though they would also be my English teacher, or one of my English teachers took me out for muffins and crumpets at Betty's in York, which was a particular treat. I don't know that I agree with you, Sam.
Well, this is the thing, James. It's, personal experiences is never an indicator. I mean, Oxford University...
You just told me about you being a boxing coach. Is that not a personal experience?
No, funny. I used the principal with Oxford University in 2015, did studies regarding teacher-student relationships, and found that students themselves found it to be an inhibitor if they had a personal relationship with the teachers, and the teachers found that likewise.
I haven't got the research in front of me, and I've got no reason to doubt you, but I do. So I mean, it's
understandable.
So where does the line go then? What do you do if you see them in a supermarket during the school holidays? Do you put your head down and run in the opposite direction?
I think that's a big difference between that and having your teacher naked on your phone.
No, you're talking about boxing coaching, not that you brought boxing coaching into it. I'm surprised
I used it as an example, not as a principle. The principle's still the principle.
What do you mean the principle's still the principle? Either a PE teacher can also teach English, or they can't. And if they're teaching you boxing or football and teaching you maths or English, it strikes me as a little bit ridiculous to suggest that they might be mutually exclusive.
No, if it's inside the school, that's different.
Why?
If a person knows you outside the school, then that's because that student does not believe to you to be there an authority over them. They start to see it as a different relationship, and that's counterproductive.
I don't recognise what you describe, even with your Oxford University research. I need you to send me the... actually, the bloke's supposed to have sent me that letter, isn't he? I should dig that out. Yeah, I need you to send me the relevant research. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm 24.
I thought so. Yeah, I know. You said you were a university lecturer. I'm very proud of you. I don't think a 24-year-old man could necessarily teach 18-year-old children if they had seen evidence of his pornographic performances. But this bloke is I don't know, I keep mentioning that he's 17 stone. He's 6'2", he's 29, he's got no children. I would give him a chance, and if it turns out he can't control the class, then you can come to a mutual arrangement that he's going to sling his hook. But until you've proved that he can't control the class, I'm not sure you can legislate, can you?
Let's put it this way. Let's say he teaches the class. Everything sort of goes well. Does that not open a door?
To what?
Thinking that, we basically had a porn star teach our students, or a past porn star, let's say.
Yeah.
So why can't we invite such and such? Why can't we invite such and such? And that's going to create far new legislation.
Now you sound a bit mad. You need to tell me what you mean by such and such.
So, for example, let's say
these are the arguments that suck the marrow out of my very core. When you say, "Oh yes, but if you let a dog walk down the road, then tomorrow there might be an elephant in your attic."
No. What I'm saying is, you allow a former porn star to teach your students, knowing that they're 15, 16-year-olds, they have a natural thing against authority, etc. But let's give the benefit of the doubt. He's a 6'2" dude, 17 stones, not light, of course.
Yeah.
Probably not as muscular as you mentioned earlier. But ultimately, you're now opening a door So now someone else can say, well, I've done such and such.
Yeah, like what, though? You need to tell me what this spooky thing is that I'm supposed to be scared of.
Okay, let's say someone has done certain crimes in the past, for example.
But he hasn't done any crimes.
No, we're talking about things that the students will think.
No, I don't care what the students think. They'll think what I tell them to think. I'm their teacher. You cannot say, by giving this man who hasn't committed any crimes a job, you may leave the door open to giving people who committed crimes a job.
Thing. You just said now you don't care what the students think. That's not how education works. What the students think is far more important.
Oh, Sam. For heaven's sake, you've just fallen in. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 12 years. I teach the entire country. How many people are there in your class?
Sorry?
How many people are there in your class?
In the college or in the university?
In the college.
In the college class is roughly around 30, 35.
Yeah, there's 1 million in mine.
And who are the millions?
Everybody with their radio on at the moment. Tune in daily to learn. You are one of my pupils. I'm teaching you rational thought. I'm teaching you the power of thinking. So here's what you've done wrong. It's what AJ Eyre would have called a category error. You do not suggest that by giving a job to somebody who hasn't committed a crime, you open the door to such and such, and when asked what such and such is, you say, well, maybe somebody who has committed a crime will end up getting a job. That, with the greatest of respect, pupil of the week, that is just daft. Oh, Niall, I feel for you. I've just been in a 2-hour meeting and stuck on LBC, James. What's going on? He asks, after our conversation with Sam about, I don't know, porn teaching and me having 1 million pupils in my classroom. I feel your pain, but I'm not going to do anything to alleviate it. This made me chuckle as well, from Karen in a tweet to @Mr. James OB. She says, my daughter's history teacher stood for UKIP in the local elections. I'd rather he'd been a porn star or a maths teacher. It's hard to be revisionist in maths. Oh. Michaela is in Stratford. Michaela, take me back to the porn star maths teacher and tell me what you think.
Hi, James.
Hello, Michaela.
Hi, I'm a first-time caller, so I was just listening to it, obviously coming through London.
Yeah.
And do you know what, personally, my belief is, as long as he's teaching the children well and it doesn't affect them, does it really matter? He's lucky to have the body to be able to be a porn star, as far as I can see.
Well, yeah, you say that, but when you're blessed with a body like that, I can tell you from personal experience, it can be a bit of a burden, actually, Michaela. You quite often find that women objectify you and treat you like a piece of meat, where you want to be recognised for the beauty on the inside, not just the beauty on the outside. But what people are suggesting is that when he's back in the classroom, he won't have a hope of controlling it.
Well, then he shouldn't, in the first place, be a teacher. That shouldn't be nothing to do with him being a porn star, is it?
I think I agree with you.
An option.
No, I think I agree with you. And him and the head teacher will know whether or not he's capable of riding out this storm.
Exactly.
I think that was one of his films, Riding Out This Storm, was one of his... No, stop it, seriously.
I mean, you do your radio station, James.
Yeah?
Besides that, if you was a porn star, would it still affect your work you do now? No. Well, you.
Yeah, I mean, it might undermine some of my more moralising positions, but he's a maths teacher. He's not supposed to have moralising positions, is he? There's no hypocrisy involved in this.
No, I don't. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Jane.
Have you got children, Michaela?
I have children. Yes, I have left school.
Oh, okay. You sound far too young for that.
Yeah, right.
No, seriously, you do. I thought you were about 24 from your voice when you were talking to me.
Oh, bless you. No, I'm not. I'm 50. And my children, one's 26 and one's 19. And if they were being taught by a teacher, as long as he was teaching them correctly and outside of school, he was being a porn star, wouldn't bother me one bit. Good luck to him.
Good luck to him. And this, for me, is the emerging consensus, although 24-year-old university lecturer Samuel was outraged at the very suggestion. One other mum with a naughty 15-year-old suggesting that this would be grist to her mischievous boy's mill. But I think I always have this thing in the back of my head wondering why I see things the way that I see them. We can't all be born with our opinions established. So I listened to Michaela and to Jared, the dad whose son actually goes to this school, and I think they're right. And yet I can't quite join them because I've got this kind of... I presume it's to do with my Catholic education. They're very moralistic, quite hypocritical. given that both of the schools that I went to have subsequently seen teachers sent to jail for child abuse, the idea that I would still carry any form of moral instruction from those schools, or indeed the idea that I took my sex education at the age of 13 from a man in a dress who'd taken a vow of celibacy, I kind of probably should have parked all that by now. But he's still, I don't know, I don't want to suggest that anyone who's got a problem with it is labouring under some sort of hypocritical quasi-religious restriction. Michael is in Bournemouth. Michael, what do you think? We may never... What was the pause for? Effect?
Yes.
Oh, well, it worked. Had us all on tenterhooks. Now, what would you like to say, Michael?
My thing is actually to flip it round. What about the protection of the teacher in terms of bullying?
Yes.
So I don't think it's going to be long before some kid maybe puts up a photo around the school and may blur out the manhood. But I think in terms of the protection of the teacher himself, I don't know if he'd be able to hack it.
Well, then there's only one way to find out. Suck it and see, which I believe is also one of his favourite films. No, I've got to stop. Stop it, Michael, you dirty man, honestly.
Very good. Oh, one other request. Can you do the Mystery Hour twice a week?
It's 12:25 is the time. Paul's in Grove Park. Paul, what do we think about this teacher?
Absolutely nothing. Red herring.
Go on.
If the man can teach, the man can teach.
Well,
you had a discussion a few years ago about a lady teacher who had a few tattoos.
Yeah. And you think it's the same?
Exactly the same.
Have you got any tattoos?
No.
Have you ever appeared in a pornographic film?
No.
All right. I don't know what I was going to do with that little game if you'd answered the questions differently, but it hasn't really worked out very well from my end of the phone line.
Look,
it's not the same. Come off it. If your kid have you got any children?
I've got 3 girls and a boy.
Right. I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm not going to specify. You are going to look me in the eye now and say, if one of your kids came home tonight and said, Dad, I've had a tattoo, and the other one came home and said, Dad, I've starred in a porn film, your reaction would be identical.
If they were under 18...
Shut the front door! Shut the front...
I would hit the roof.
Yeah, well, obviously, if they're over 18...
Over 18... kids shouldn't be watching...
tying himself in knots. Tying himself in knots. A tattoo and a pornographic film career are not the same.
No, you said about the kids on the bus with the pornographic film.
Yeah.
Porn is all over the net.
Flipping out, Paul. You listen closely. You just picked up on two things I don't think I've mentioned.
I'm a lorry driver. So
you've got me plugged in.
I listen to you all day.
Oh, bless you. You're right. So for people who aren't as familiar with the back catalogue of this programme, let me just quickly explain. 3 lads on a bus watching really dirty porn, really hardcore stuff. They must have been probably 11 or 12, I'd say year 7 or 8. I'm with one of my kids. She doesn't really know what's going on, but I get them to pack it in. And the 3 of them, one was the ringleader who was sort of loving it. One was going along with it because he wanted the approval. And the lad on the end looked like he was looking at ghosts. He was white, he was pale. Yeah. It was horrible. So I'm with you on that. They shouldn't be looking at stuff like that. But go on.
They should not be looking at stuff like that, but... it's out there. The genie's out the box.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about certain things. What he does outside of his occupation,
yes,
is fine with me. As long as when my kids go to school, he does his job to the best of his ability and doesn't bring his outside work into the school playground.
That would be weird.
That sounded really bad.
It did, yeah. Never mind. Someone else will remember this call in 2 or 3 years' time.
Oh, just don't say that. No, but as long as he can teach the children what he's trained to do, that's it. I don't care what he does outside of work.
No, why would you possibly?
If he needs to make a few extra quid here and there, that's fine.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you'd be all right with him carrying on doing it, would you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
why not? Well, I don't know. I've done this wrong, Paul. I've had lots of sensible people ring me up being sensible. I sort of wanted crazy people to ring me up being crazy on this one.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry for being sensible. Haven't you read the rule book? It's a radio phone-in show. You're supposed to say that the colour of your passport makes you feel less opposed to Nazis. You're missing the first hour. It's coming up to 12:30. I think we've put that clip out if you think I'm exaggerating. We really did speak to a lovely lady in Maida Vale earlier who believes that when her passport was maroon, she was somehow less opposed to Nazism than she will be when her passport is navy blue. Fish. It's coming up to 12:30. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. That's the second person to bring tattoos into it, which is a little bit spooky because that was the other story that I had in the barrel for today. That was the other story that I had up my sleeve. The Pope has turned his attention to tattoos. Gary's been in touch. Gary, I have to tell you, is built like a brick outhouse. He's one of my regular listeners and contributors. I've had the pleasure of meeting him, but he had his shirt on at the time, so I was unable to fully appreciate the extent of his physique. He's now down, I saw on Twitter the other day, to 6% body fat, and his muscles, he looks like conkers in a sock. And he's just been in touch to say if he had his time again, and he's only in his 30s, I think, if that, he wouldn't have had any tattoos, which is quite a big deal, given that he's pretty much covered in them. And I've always had this sneaking suspicion that eventually almost everybody regrets a tattoo. And after this, while we keep the conversation on the board about the porn star maths teacher, I think I'm going to use your experiences to prove that with a few exceptions, there must come a point for everybody where you regret having a tattoo. That just must do, mustn't there? Where this unfolding apparent terrorist event in France continues to escalate. French police reporting now that 2 people have died. It had been reported that one of the uniformed police officers shot hadn't been seriously injured or critically injured. Unclear whether the incidents in the supermarket where the hostage situation continues and the shooting of the police officer are connected, although media reports pretty conclusively suggest that they are. I can confirm that French police, as Simon Conway has been reporting in his bulletins for over half an hour now, French police confirm that 2 people have indeed died, and the security services are on the ground with responsibility handed over to the anti-terrorist specialists. About a dozen wounded in a supermarket hostage-taking in southern France, I'm also hearing as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on developments there throughout the afternoon on LBC. As I hand over to Sheila at 1 o'clock, we will no doubt be bringing you more reports from there as and when they appear. The gunman, I should tell you, has reportedly declared allegiance to the so-called Islamic State, some customers and employees. Indeed, it's reported by the AFP news agency that most employees and customers at the supermarket managed to flee, but the French Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, has said that the situation was serious and that all signs currently pointed toward a terrorist act. We are having a conversation very much at the opposite end of the seriousness scale at the moment, but it is one that lends itself to a degree of argy-bargy. I don't actually have any phone lines free at the minute, which is a shame because I was hoping to extend the conversation to the Pope's recent comments regarding tattoos. Quizzed by a young student priest from Ukraine, Pope Francis suggested that tattoos are great. You shouldn't be afraid of tattoos. Do you know that in Eritrea it used to be common for Christian girls to have a tattoo of a cross on their forehead as a symbol of beauty? Tattoo a cross on the forehead of young girls as a symbol of beauty. You live and learn, don't you? But he added that young priests could use tattoos to connect with the people they were trying to reach out to. A tattoo could often communicate information about the person. It could become a talking point and a way for the priest to find out more about an individual. He said it was important to connect with the culture of the young. And I think he's right. I just wonder whether, when you cease to be young, the tattoo becomes something you regret. I've got one phone line free. You just test my theory that eventually everyone regrets their tattoos. I guess you'd need to be quite old to offer up conclusive proof that my theory is wrong. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Steve's in Talgarth in Wales. Steve, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James.
Hello,
yeah,
Steve.
I'd like to express my astonishment. I can't think of a stronger word than that.
Shock.
What did you say?
Shock.
Yeah, I feel like, well, astonishment I think is more than shock.
No, shock's definitely more than astonishment.
Okay, gobsmackedness. Will that do?
Yeah, I still think shock's better, but I like gobsmackedness. Describe your What are you gobsmacked about, Terry? Steve?
Well,
Terry's next.
I'm gobsmacked that you're taking a subject as serious as this in such a laissez-faire, very light-hearted manner. Furthermore, I'm really, really surprised that many of your callers seem to take a similar view.
But it's not. I mean, they might be taking it seriously. They're giving it serious thought, and they're concluding that there's nothing to see here. There's no big deal.
Well,
what's the problem?
I mean, well, like most adults, because you can't be off it now. It's everywhere. Yeah. I've seen this stuff. Now, I don't know what you're...
I need to be clear on this. He's a gay porn star. I haven't watched any gay porn.
That's even worse.
Why?
Well, let's not go into that.
Well, hang on. I think you might have just let the cat out of the bag there, Steve.
Okay, it's the same. Right. Okay, I'll take that back.
Yeah, you don't mean it, though.
But I mean, the days of, fiesta and parade and all that, I mean, they're over. I mean, porn ain't what it used to be, is it? And you're saying that it's okay...
You sound nostalgic, Steve.
For a school teacher to indulge in the sorts of things which are available for everyone, including children, to watch online now.
No, it's not. No one's suggesting children should watch it. It's a sad reflection of technology's relationship with modernity that children often do and can watch it. But I certainly don't think they should be encouraged to do so. I don't understand what the problem is. It's footage of consenting adults doing sexy stuff together. Why is that somehow excluding him from being a teacher?
Well, you've come off the subject, James. We're talking not whether or not children should watch it or be allowed to watch it. We're talking about whether a guy who actually practices it has got any kind of position standing up in front of school children and teaching them. Yeah. The man should be drummed out of the profession and never allowed back again.
But what's he done wrong?
He hasn't done anything wrong in what he did.
So why should he be drummed out of the profession and never allowed? Why are you drumming me out of the profession?
You didn't allow me to answer the question.
Oh, go on.
Done nothing more illegal in actually taking a part in a pornographic film. What he's doing wrong is immoral in that he's putting himself, and his school is allowing him to stand up in front of school children and profess to be an intelligent man and to be respected, and he's not going to get that.
You don't think intelligent men can make porn films?
I think they're less intelligent, yeah, certainly. I think he's got bad judgment.
All right, if I've got him on the other line now, and you stay on this line here, and I give you both a maths test, and he wins, what does that mean?
Well, it means he's good at maths. It doesn't make him more intelligent, generally.
All right, we'll do a general knowledge quiz as well, and then some IQ questions, and if he wins all of those, what happens then?
Yeah, bring him on.
He's not on the other line, Steve, but the idea that you think intelligence is he's not intelligent enough to be a teacher because he makes porn films. Come on, mate. You don't mean that. What?
Oh, no, you've crystallised it and put it in such a way like you always do, James.
Well, I've repeated your own words back to you like I always do, Steve.
James, you're taking your usual relativist line, like you do on all subjects, whether they're to do with immigration, race, gender.
What does relativist mean?
In that you're... Well, you don't need to me up. I've used the term.
Yeah, so what does it mean? I don't know what you mean by it.
Now you're trying to use your privileged position to try and ridicule.
It's just you said that I always act in a relativist way, and I don't know what you mean. I'm asking you to tell me what you meant by the word that you used to describe me.
Okay, relativist is comparing one thing with another without actually specifying where the goalposts are.
Pardon?
You will say that it's for instance, that it's better to murder someone with a bullet than it is to murder them with a knife.
Pardon?
One's relatively vicious, whereas the other one's not.
Steve, mate, I love you like a brother, mate, but I've never said that, and I don't understand what you're talking about. But I would suggest, I would cautiously suggest that if high intelligence is something that disbars you from making pornographic films, you should seriously look into a career in pornographic films. Terry's in Orpington. Terry, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello there, James.
Hello, Terry.
What I'd like to say, James, that I think at the heart of the issue is it's a morality issue. And my opinion is that pornography is morally very wrong.
Why? Because they taught me that at school, and I think they were wrong. But why do you think pornography is wrong?
Because pornography is all about people having sex with other people that they're not in an intimate relationship with, and then either it goes in magazines or videos or films, whatever.
Yeah, but you haven't explained why it would be morally wrong. You've just described,
why
what it is.
Morally wrong.
Yeah.
Well, we get our whole moral framework and moral compass from the Bible.
Well, some people do.
Wrong.
Some people do.
Well, I do, James.
Yes.
As a Christian.
Yes.
And it says that it is wrong in the Bible.
It doesn't mention pornography.
No, but it mentions sex.
It does mention occasionally sex. So you think that anybody who is having sex outside a loving, committed relationship should be disbarred from teaching?
Well, it's not setting a good example to the children because.
So you do. So I mean, anyone who's had. What about sex outside marriage? If we take the Bible to its natural conclusion, anyone who's had sex outside marriage should be disbarred from teaching, Terry.
No, because
what? That's so immoral, though. What sort of example are they setting to the children?
What, having sex outside of marriage?
Yeah.
Well, the ideal.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah, I know. Sex is a wonderful gift, and it's to be enjoyed,
as long as you keep the receipt.
Pardon?
Nothing. It does definitely say in the Bible that sex outside marriage is wrong. Your rationale for saying that this bloke shouldn't be allowed to teach is that it is morally wrong because of your biblical based beliefs. So I'm just pointing out to you that logically your own position has to be that anyone who's had sex outside marriage shouldn't be allowed to teach children.
People that are teaching children should be setting a good example and teaching children about healthy relationships.
He's a maths teacher.
And when sex is appropriate.
Yeah. So if people are having sex in an inappropriate way, in your view, they shouldn't be allowed to teach. Why can't you just say it out loud? Does it feel a bit silly when you hear it said back to you?
No, because if they're having sex outside of marriage, outside of the classroom, then it's not going to be an issue because the children wouldn't know about it. But with pornography,
they might know. What if he lived with his boyfriend or girlfriend, and they only had one bedroom and a double bed? These children aren't stupid.
No, but I'm just saying, from a moral point of view, it is wrong.
Well, I know you are, and I'm pointing out that if you take your moral position to its inevitable and logical conclusion, you would be in favour of banning all teachers who've ever had sex outside marriage.
No, I wouldn't ban all teachers that have never had sex outside of who have had sex outside of marriage.
But it's morally wrong.
We wouldn't have any teachers, would we?
Well, we got there in the end. It's 12:47. A couple more calls on this curious question of the teacher suspended after his secret life. I don't know if it was even that secret. You can't really be a secret porn star. That'd be rubbish. No one would be allowed to buy it. But we took a call from a dad of a boy at the school who I thought was brilliant. One of the coolest calls we've taken in a while, who simply said, yeah, well, I can talk to my kid about this. My parenting skills, dreadful phrase, are up to the task. My boy will go back, and the teacher happens to be a brilliant maths teacher who my lad really likes. What's the problem? Answer, Bible. Kareem's in Harrow. Kareem, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First-time caller.
You're very welcome.
I'm confused as to why people have an issue with this. So, I'm a student at the moment. I, as a student, have no issue with this at all. And I don't understand why, if people are saying that they don't see anything wrong with the profession per se, then I don't understand why they'd want to exclude him from teaching.
Well, the operational objection would be that it will undermine his ability to discipline a class. I think Amanda in Wigan pursued that position best with her 15-year-old, who she said would just sort of have a field day.
Actually, on that point, I'll share a quick story with you. So in high school, we had a brilliant maths teacher by the name of Mr. Davis, and one day he disappeared from sort of school. We weren't told why or what happened to him or where he'd gone. And 3 months later, he came back, Mrs. Davis. Now, you can imagine that was quite a shock to a lot of us in the class, but actually we recovered from it pretty quickly, and there wasn't really an issue with her now maintaining authority. And I'm saying that if we can, accept someone like Mrs. Davis, And if someone like Mrs. Davis is able to maintain authority, then I don't see why a maths teacher who used
it's so arbitrary, but it reminds me of that terrible story from I think 2013, when Richard Littlejohn in the Daily Mail wrote about a trans teacher, exactly the same circumstances as you. She was called Lucy Meadows, and after she took her own life, the coroner said to the assembled members of the press, said, "Shame on you, shame on all of you." This was after Littlejohn wrote a piece headlined, "He's not only in the wrong body, he's in the wrong job." And he asked whether anyone had thought of the devastating effect on Meadows' pupils of her change of gender. And I remember saying at the time, I'm pretty sure the kids would be cool with it. It's only sort of repressed and weird old men that have a problem with this.
No, I agree completely. And you know what, from a student's perspective, I think not only should they bring this teacher back, but they should promote him to head of PSHE. I think he should be in charge of teacher sex education.
Well, let's not get carried away, mate. He might not want to. I'm just looking up that story, referring back to it. It was astonishing, actually. The coroner singled out the Daily Mail as he accused the paper of ridicule and humiliation and a character assassination of Lucy Meadows, 32, who took her own life in March 2014. If only Lucy Meadows had taught at your school, Kareem, and managed to keep it away from the grubby little paws of Daily Mail columnists, then she'd probably still be with us today. Danny is in Coventry. Danny, what would you like to say?
How you doing, James? Yeah, the thing is, I think we're overlooking the negative effect porn can have on people's lives, and I talk from a position where I've been addicted to porn before, and it's actually really almost destroyed my family home and my family life. And I feel that if someone who's in a position of authority and who's a mentor to kids, and he's been a porn star, it kind of normalises it. And I think porn...
But porn is normal. Addiction to porn isn't normal. You don't ban booze because of alcoholism, and you don't ban cars because of road accidents.
But I think if you look at like statistics and stuff, porn addiction is getting very more prominent in...
So we need more education about it then. We probably shouldn't be doing more battening down the hatches and keeping it in the darkness, should we, or not?
No, I agree. I definitely agree with more education, because porn nowadays, I mean, it's getting more violent, the actresses are getting younger, and there's studies linking porn watching to paedophilia and rape.
All
and
right.
yeah, because...
Well, I mean, again, I would say, I appreciate that you've been down a sort of fairly dark tunnel, but most people who have viewed pornography don't entertain any of those thoughts and problems. But you're right, we need to have a bigger conversation about it. Briefly, why should that prevent this fella from being a teacher?
I think because if he's been a porn star, it normalises to kids, oh, well, Sir's been a porn star, he's done it, so porn must be okay, to a certain extent.
But it is okay to a certain extent.
Well, I'm not sure. I think...
Well, I am.
Eventually, the more porn you watch, it can become a gateway, can't it?
Well, the more booze you drink, the more weed you smoke. You know, all of these things. You can use the word gateway. I feel your pain, though, Danny. I really do. 12:57 is the time. Steve's in Mayfair. Steve, what have you got?
Hi, James.
Hello, Steve.
I've just called because I actually make the porn films, and I've worked with a lot of people in the industry. Some very colourful characters, a lot of true professionals, and quite a lot of teachers and ex-teachers.
Really? Is it a particular path for teachers and ex-teachers to follow? I never would have suspected that before.
Well, I've worked in 4 years. I've worked with 3 or 4 of them who have included my my partner who left job in teaching to go into porn full time.
Well, you live and learn. You haven't worked with this fella, with Aaron Cage, as he calls himself when he's not being a maths teacher. What would you feel about? I mean, I presume you'd be comfortable with people who've been in porn films doing anything then, given that they're your sort of friends and colleagues and partners. But do you understand why some people think he shouldn't be in a classroom?
I do understand, and it is genuinely accepted within the sort of fraternity that if you're going to do a job like that and you get found out, then the likelihood is you will lose your job or be suspended. It's kind of sad because a lot of the people who would condemn people like this are actually sort of like some of our biggest clients at the end, as end users, you know?
Yes, and I think we'll leave that one hanging. I think that there is definitely some possibility, and the people that make the loudest noises of objection often turn out to be nursing the most enthusiastic or secret enthusiasms. It's a bit like homophobia. You could always spot a repressed homosexual by the volume of their homophobia. It's coming up to 12:59. I think we're out of time, are we? We've got, yeah, my apologies to Dave, who was about to ring me up and tell me that he's covered head to foot in tattoos and has never regretted it. Is that right, Dave?
That is right, yeah.
You will,
and
mate.
Also,
you will do one day. You will do.
I signed... I did manage to get my tattoos saved. I was the one that rung in a few months ago on the Mystery Hour.
Oh, gosh, you blimey. And now we've run out of time. Sheila Fogarty, speaking of people covered head to toe in tattoos, here's Sheila Fogarty.